Hi everybody, this video is sponsored by a contribution from Anonymous, and here's what she wants you to know. Dear Ollie, I've been listening to your videos for quite some time now, but I've never been able to put my story down on paper. I have found that hearing other people's experiences in your message with regards to no contact have given me a lot of strength. So here's my attempt to put my story into words, and I'm sorry if this is long. I've known since I was a very small child that my mother is abusive. I was actually in foster care for a period of time as a child, but because I was never sexually abused by my parents or hit around the head with the frying pan, the abuse was difficult to evidence. Social workers and therapists just thought I was an out-of-control child and never reflected upon the causes of some of my behaviors were. They constantly tried to persuade me to return home or have contact with my parents, which I refused for over a year. I was 14. In my professional life, I now work with children in foster care, and it remains a source of great frustration to me at times. There appears to still be a lack of understanding with regards to the damaging impact of personality disordered parenting upon a child's emotional development. Where do I even begin my story? I am a year and a half into no contact and almost 3 years reduced contact. I'm 33 years old, and the no contact was triggered by an unplanned pregnancy. My son is now 2. I am bringing up my son alone, but also parenting him with his dad, who I am no longer in a relationship with. I am cut off from my narcissistic mother, enabler father, 2 brothers, one of whom is a golden child, as well as all of my extended family, because my mother literally made abusive phone calls to anyone who remained in contact with me and turned herself into the victim. That's amazing to me, because that statement would sound like a contradiction, but not in terms of the narcissist. The narcissist can be the bully, can bully you into into themselves being the victim. You make abusive phone calls and then claiming you're the victim, and then people go along with it. It's stunning. Growing up, my mom was totally dependent financially on my dad because she refused to work. Yet, she was also demanding and controlling, calling him a loser and continually taunting him that she could have married someone better. She had delusions of grandeur and at times talks with a put-on, upper-class voice like the Queen, even though we were poor. My dad flaps around her and would say things like how hard she worked running the home. My mother never cooked anything or other than frozen foods like pizzas, rarely cleaned, and would watch soap operas and game shows on TV a lot of the day. Most of my memories of being a small child were how demonized I was. I have 2 much younger brothers. Neither of them were demonized like I was. My youngest brother was literally coddled by my mother, and he is now a spoiled golden child. I believe my mother especially has issues with me being a girl. They usually do. Narcissistic mothers are always going to be harder on their daughters. Or if they don't have daughters, they're going to choose one son and raise him like he's a daughter. I was told over and over by my mother that I was not normal, ugly, and a freak. I was actually a slight girl with blue eyes and white blonde hair. I was told the reason they had difficulty selling the house was because when prospective buyers came around to visit, the people visiting were so appalled and disgusted by the sight of me and my behavior. I was 2 at the time of the move. They didn't want to buy the house. I was apparently the reason that friends of my mother moved across the country. It was relentless. Now I'm a mother myself, and I feel so much disgust for her and her lack of self-control or ability to treasure her child. You are nothing more than her scapegoat for her own shitty consequences in her life. You know, that's what narcissistic mothers do, and they do it for several reasons. They get several things out of that. First, they just enjoy hurting you. You know, they enjoy hurting you. They enjoy making you think that there's something wrong with you. When you tell a child that, they can see the hurt in your face, and they get off on it. She absolutely gets off on it. And then you got to carry this around with you the rest of your life. And then it's like it's just a shift blame from her own shitty behavior. It's just more projection. She would also compare me negatively over and over to other girls in my school and say how pretty they were and how I paled in comparison. She had no capacity to regulate herself when angered, would literally go berserk. When I was around 6, she thought I had broken the Hoover. I was dragged up the stairs by my hair, clumps ripped out. I was kicked and had my hand bitten, only for her to realize 10 minutes later it was actually still working. Yeah, you got a rage mom, much like Drunky the Fuck Clown, where the littlest thing doesn't go right, and they just snap, and they're coming for you, looking to blame you for anything they can. And one of the worst friggin' beatings my mother gave me was when she ran over the garden hose, which had a coupler on it to extend it, which was left in the driveway. And my father told her, like, don't pull the car in the driveway because I'm cleaning. She did it. She ran over the hose. She cracked it. My father yelled at her, and she slapped me in the face because I distracted her, and it was somehow my fault. And she said I didn't do anything, and she just beat the living shit out of me. Good times. When I was around 6, she thought, okay, I already got that. I now believe my dad to be completely dysfunctional himself. Well, clearly, if he's going to put up with this shit. He knows what she is like, and when she would go nuts, and as I got older, would come and talk to me like his confidant and say he knew she wasn't right, yet then would completely backtrack and take her side. Neither of them had any boundaries. There was no privacy, and my mother would also spend time trying to antagonize teachers at my school. At 12, I took an overdose of painkillers because I couldn't cope with living in that environment anymore. By 13, I was staying away from the house and willingly sexually involved with a predator in his late 20s. I thought he was my boyfriend and that it was not abuse. I was a girl with chronically low self-esteem and basically perfect prey. Shortly after all this, I actually went into foster care. But after 2 years, my parents managed to persuade me to come home. This was one of the biggest mistakes of my life. This was one of the biggest mistakes of my life because my life had actually flourished in foster care. And that's why they wanted you out. She had 2 years to plot her revenge, sit there and stew. She's not going to get away from me. She wasn't going to let you succeed. She wanted to get her claws back in you. I'm now in my 30s, have a degree and a master's as well as a professional job. I achieved these qualifications through sheer grit and determination and not help from my family. 3 years ago, I fell unexpectedly pregnant with the man I had been seeing for almost a year. This guy was not a narc, but did have some other issues of his own in terms of a demanding ex that made the relationship less than ideal. At my first scan, the sonographer went quiet, then later took me into a room with a consultant. They were concerned that the baby's measurements were coming up as high risk for abnormalities, heart defects. I had to wait weeks. That felt like torture for invasive tests to find out if my baby had a potentially deadly defect. It was at this point I decided to break the news about the pregnancy to my family. Even when hearing about the potentially heartbreaking concern raised by the medics, my mother literally became enraged and started shouting, "How dare I wait this long to tell them?" Always about them. Always about them. She badgered me, shouting, "How do you propose to bring up a child? You'd better start explaining how you will pay for it." This was this was not about her being concerned. It was in a tone that was vitriolic, and I would go as far as saying seething with jealousy. She also screamed about how did I think this would make her look to the extended family, and how could I do this to her because I was not married. It was just before Christmas. My father just had heartedly told her to stop, just half-heartedly told her to stop it, and that Jesus wouldn't want arguments like this before basically just allowing her to carry on. I walked out of the house into the night, shaking and crying, with her continuing to scream. I drove to my son's father's house, explained what happened, and he was completely appalled. He supported me in my decision that I never wanted to see them again. And you shouldn't have. Like, first of all, you were a grown adult with college degrees and a career. It doesn't matter. The narcissist will use any situation they can against you. Because it's always about them. How is this going to make me look? Well, I don't know. I'm at the time, if this was 3 years ago, 2013, 2014, you wouldn't have been the first time. It wouldn't be the first time a single woman got pregnant. And it's not like it was some random guy you didn't know who he was. Things happen. And now you're having these medical concerns, which I hope turned out to be nothing, because they did that to me and with Aaron, that they looked at a sonogram. And to me, I think it was just the bill, the insurance with all these tests, but it's literally scared the shit out of us. I faced all the appointments for my baby with the support of my friends. For a while, my aunt on my dad's side was very supportive, but my mother began plaguing her with nuisance calls. I received the news that my baby was healthy and a baby boy. Oh, good, thank God. My mother saw it as a source of humiliation that other people now knew more about my pregnancy, but she left out the part about how abusive she was and how she refused to say sorry. She found out my son's father's work email address and also his home address and began emailing him behind my back. In one, she wrote that she was surprised that he would want to be with a slut like her daughter. She also sent him letters with comments written on the outside of the envelope for the postman to see, trying to goad and provoke a reaction. She made threats that if she did not get a response, she would turn up at his office to ensure that he lost his job. If this isn't proof that the narcissist will go to any extent to get their way, they do this over and over and over again. The narcissist wants you to be destroyed, wants you to be miserable, wants you to get fired from your job, wants to see you down in the mud. That's what they do. They go after, that's how many stories have we heard of these people showing up at their jobs, calling their bosses, their own parents calling their bosses, trying to get people fired, trying to put you down in the mud. These people are dangerous. My son was born as an emergency C-section after a 3-day failed induction. The birth was extremely difficult, and although he is healthy now, at first he had to be rushed to the special care babies unit because his breathing had stopped and he had been born blue and not breathing. I let my mother see my son in the hospital because I mistakenly thought she deserved the chance and she might be different with her grandchild. I was so wrong, as was I. Because when you have that kid and you see it, you don't want to deny that child anything. And you think that you having that kid, like maybe this is what will wake them up. And the reason why that's such wrong thinking, and it's a mistake we all make, is because consider what your mother did to you, what my mother did to me, what so many of our parents did to us. They all had that moment where they held us for the first time, but they didn't have that reaction. Okay, so we're assuming that everybody has this reaction when they hold their child, when they see their child, and it's this life-changing experience. It's not for the narcissist. It's not. So why would your child that came out that came from you have the effect on them. It's not. You had no effect on them. She was not warm in how she spoke to him or about him, and was preoccupied with how her friends on Facebook excuse me, saw her as a grandmother. Once I was at home, my mother continued to make calls demanding attention, and that she wanted my son's father to invite her for dinner and cups of tea. She wanted to be waited on that she could take pictures of my son and report back to relatives and Facebook. When I said she should be offering to help me with the baby if she wanted to come over, her response was that her back problems are too severe. Yet she was fit and able enough to go on holiday that involved a 300-mile round trip 2 weeks later. She continued to send paragraphs and emails on a daily basis and implied threats that she would make false accusations to my workplace or his workplace to make us lose our jobs if we did not comply. Why? See, at that point, it's so obvious of what she's about. So not only will she hurt her daughter and her son-in-law, but her grandchild. Why? At that point, you take those emails and say, look, you take them to your boss at work, and look, I got a crazy mother. She's out of her mind. This is what she's planning to do, and end it. I mean, that's why you shouldn't know. But see, that was the mistake you made when you had your son. And you thought you should have left him out, but you said that was the biggest mistake you made. I was recovering from a C-section, trying to feed a newborn, and my son's dad was trying to hold down a full-time job and pay the bills. So I was so emotionally and physically exhausted that I would let her threats get to me, and on one occasion had a severe panic attack. Fortunately, my son was asleep. I tried to ask for my brothers to help her understand this, had to stop. But they basically both told me that I was the one with the problem because I was not thinking of her and putting her first. Oh, God, another couple of mama's boys. Another couple of little fucking mama's boys. Mommy can do no wrong. Sitting there with mommy on the couch, sharing pudding cups without a spoon. That's the type of little mama's boys there. Come sit with mommy, share this pudding cup with me. No spoon. I went to the police, and my mother received a warning to stop cyberstalking me and sending harassing letters and making calls. She has tried to breach this at times by sending Christmas cards with nasty messages inside, but the threats have stopped. My dad has made no attempt to have a relationship with me or his grandchild. He is dead to me. It is weird at times not having grandparents for my son. He sometimes sees the grandparents on his dad's side, but they live 200 miles away. His dad lives nearby and sees him 4 times a week. I am back to work and have a busy life. My son is beautiful, bright, and cheeky little boy, and I pray he will never understand what I went through with my family, because experience of family will, I hope, always be different. I have battled shame, depression, loneliness as a new mom trying to do no contact, and pain has been both healed and relieved now that I am a mother and I cannot wrap my head around ever treating my son how I was treated. Sorry this has been so long. Please, please, please keep making these videos. They are so powerful and so important for people that have gone no contact. All the best. Anonymous. Well, Anonymous, congratulations, first of all, for getting away and overcoming a lot of this nonsense. And you are dealing with the classic narcissistic terminator. They keep going and going and going. And you did the right thing. I mean, you went to the police, and the police, I guess in the UK, took it seriously and issued her a warning telling her to stop. And she still continues to go on and on and on. So she's at the point now where she's been gotten warned by the police to knock this off, and she still won't stop. That's why going no contact, the sooner the better. The sooner the better. Going no contact is what neutralizes that terminator. Because if you keep letting them in, letting them in, letting them in, it's like a dog with bad habits. Or when my fat cat keeps staring at me because he wants to be fed over and over, and finally he breaks it, so he'll just keep staring, knowing eventually he'll break me. It's the same thing with the narcissist. Every time you let them in and break no contact, this is what happens. There is no moment that's going to change their heart. There is nothing you can do or say or anything that's going to change their heart and change what they are. They are machines. They can't be argued or reasoned with. No empathy, no remorse, no shame. Ever, ever, ever. And your father really shows his true colors because he don't say a damn word. And he allowed this shit to go on for years. And your brothers too. If the family wants to stay around that, let them deal with it, not you. Whatever job you have going forward, I would make it as soon as you have the job, and if you're still at the same job, I would talk to my bosses. I would say, listen, I would put this out there and say, listen, I am dealing with a crazy mother. So if you get a call, please let me know because she likes to call and make crazy accusations to try to punish me. Same with your son's dad. And I have to say as well, I commend you for being able to parent with him. You know, even though the relationship didn't work out, he sees him 4 times a week. It seems like you guys are getting along. You know, you're making it about raising the child, not the relationship. It doesn't even sound like you guys had major issues. It's just you weren't for each other, and that's mature, and that's just such a good way to handle it. And really, you should be commended for being having such a head about you to be able to make better decisions than most that have been abused like this. So, you know, you've been around these tendencies, and with a mother like that, I mean, it doesn't seem like you have a vindictive streak in you whatsoever. Because your mother, it's all about that vindictiveness. Vindictive. I'll get you, I'll get you, I'll get you. I'll get you, I'll get you, I'll get you. Kind of like somebody else we're having a little issue with on my channel. I'll get you, I'll get you, I'll get you. No, you won't. No contact, and stay no contact. Thank you for your contribution, and thank you for your story. I really appreciate it. Thank you to everybody watching. Please leave any advice or comments in the section below. And again, if you want your story or you have a question you want read on the channel, you know what to do with the PayPal link in the description box. I'll have the video right out to you. This is Ollie Matthews. Thanks for watching. I'll see you all again shortly.